This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Becky Schmooke, who is a leadership strategist known for cutting through the noise. Her work challenges outdated models of leadership by reframing it as a lifestyle, not a title, and the key to long-term performance, resilience, and impact. As founder of Stoic Edge Consulting and Becky's Mindful Kitchen, Becky equips high-performing teams with practical, repeatable tools rooted in Stoic philosophy and behavioral science. Becky's specialty is working with elite performers, including NFL rookies. Her SAFE and STOA frameworks are already in use across the NFL programs, helping them lead with clarity under pressure. With over a decade of experience and a reputation for raw honesty and results, she gives teams the mindset, language, and tools to lead from the inside out and own the moments that define their legacy. So, Becky, welcome to the program. It's really great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Gosh, you reading that, I'm like, I really want to meet that person. I was like, she sounds really cool. It's
Yeah,
so weird to always hear like bios. You're like, wait, is that?
yeah, it's true. It's impressive. So, I love it. And I just got to say, Becky Schmooke. I mean, what a great name. I mean, is that your married name or is that your maiden name?
That is my married name. My okay, so it's a cool name. The
Yeah,
struggle behind it is how it's spelled
yeah.
because the way it's spelled looks like Schmooky. It's pronounced smoke. And so that's why in all my sign-offs I have to have how to pronounce it. I'm married to a firefighter, and so that's the best way to remember is like firefighter smoke. And
Wow,
but yeah, no.
that was meant to be. That's
There's
great.
only gosh, I tell you, Steve, there's only like 100 people with that last name spelled like that in the United States. So the nice thing is I get all the usernames of just my first name and last name.
There
I
you
don't have
go.
to do any numbers, so there's advantage.
Perfect, perfect. Well, let's just start with a little context. So, tell us just a little bit of summary of, where you grew up and a little bit of your journey and how you got to where you are today, and then we'll dive into your book and other things, okay?
Awesome. So I grew up in Iowa, in Iowa City, or as I usually tell people, like 3 hours west of Chicago, to orient yourself.
Sure.
Of that. And so, yeah, I grew up in Iowa. I was born in San Diego, so I spent a lot of time in the summers going back there, and I love the West Coast a lot on that. And but
Yeah.
growing up in Iowa, it allowed for a really neat childhood. Iowa City is a university town, and I have my dad works the university. He's a professor in the medical school, runs a lab, and my mom's, like I mentioned to you, is a physical therapist as well, and she does
Yeah.
more holistic stuff. So I grew up with a really neat kind of range of ways to look at the world.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And now so you do consulting and leadership training and coaching, and I'm always interested. So how did you get into that?
So everything I've done like the technically wrong way. Like I don't follow how the normal path at all for anything. Because I got into it um through the first business I started. So I started Becky's Mindful Kitchen,
Yeah,
and I wanted to create a place for people to come together and gather and connect and cook, just cook food, not get hung up into fancy recipes or anything like that. And I wanted people to leave my kitchen saying to themselves, like, that was so easy. I can't believe I just paid to learn how to do that. Because if
yeah,
they left thinking that, then I knew they would do it again.
yeah,
And that's the same type of mindset that I kind of brought into the consulting and coaching of looking at, gosh, I think we've made leadership really complicated
yeah,
and just way too unattainable. Kind of same with mindfulness. We've overcomplicated it and just kind of this desire to demystify these these topics, mindfulness, leadership, cooking, and make people feel like it's attainable.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Now, did you really? get a chance to work with NFL rookies because you just sat next to a guy on a plane and you decided to just work up a conversation with him?
So not even a plane, the Cleveland
Okay.
airport. The
Okay.
airport, yeah, I mean,
All right.
um, yes. So again, I've kind of stumbled into things, but also been very intentional in how I've gone about it. So I had the first business and it was going really well, but Steve, I wasn't satisfied. I knew it wasn't fulfilling that purpose. And I think judging from your career, you also know what it means to when you've got it or you don't. And
Yeah.
you can be really good at something, but still be like, this isn't it.
Hmm.
And I loved the path I was going of speaking and, running these workshops. And there was still something more I felt like I wanted to do. And I was trying to get to those who are not afraid of hard things. And athletes are not afraid of hard things. They're
Yeah.
not afraid of hard work. And so it just happened to be, I was coming back from giving a keynote. I was in Cleveland airport, started talking to a man sitting by me, and he's asking questions about what I did. I don't know who he is at all. And I give my whole spiel. And he's like, you know what? You should bring that to the NFL. And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, totally. I'll go go right on and do that."
Yeah.
He ended up being with the NFLPA, so the Players Association, the union,
Yeah.
and director of communications and strategic partnerships. And so we became friends, and over the next couple months, and he said, "Hey, come to the combine." He's like, "Reach out." He told me who I should be reaching out to. I reached out to them. Show up at the combine in Indianapolis and met with somebody from the Vikings, and that's how I got started. I
Yeah.
got really lucky with who I ended up connecting with. One of the best people in
That's
you know,
fantastic. You just never know. I have a personal story too that I was in Washington, D.C. doing advocacy work for our profession and a long couple days and I get on the plane and I don't want to talk to anybody. So I get on my headphones, I get my book out and I kind of lean over to the window, and like I'm not going to talk to anybody. And a woman sits right down next to me in the middle row, a middle seat, and I hear her talking to the person on the other side of her, and I go, "Oh my God, this is my state legislator,
Yeah.
or my legislator for my state." And I'm like, "Oh." So, I took off the headphones, put the book away, got my strength back up, and had about a 4-hour conversation with her on the plane back to Seattle, and kind of developed this relationship that lasted the test of time. So you just never know sometimes. So
You don't. And I think it's one of those things of just being willing to engage with the moment and with life. And,
yeah,
that's hence my whole kind of thing. I don't think that we truly live life as much as we simply pass time. And we let these moments just pass us right by. And you know, I, and it's not saying that you have to be engaged with every single person at all times. Like, yes, there's times where you just need to put the headphones on and, reset. But man, those conversations in the random places, those are the ones that have led to the best friendships around.
absolutely. And let's not forget, as we're setting the stage here too, you have three beautiful daughters. How old are they?
Yep. So I have a 16-year-old, I call her my bonus daughter, and a 15-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old. So we are right in the thick of that time of life. And it's fun.
I can
It is
only,
fun.
yeah, that's
Um, it, it's neat, and it's cool to be able to be doing this, and they get to be part of it in so many ways.
okay. Well, let's talk a little bit. I'm going to hold this up for people that are watching on the video, and this is the book that you've released right here, and it's called "Choose the Handle That Holds: A Guide to Living, Leading, and Owning the Moments That Matter." This is a great accomplishment. I'm always enamored by authors, but yours is really good. It's really good. I couldn't put it down, to be honest with you. So congratulations on a great book.
Thank you. It's a longer book than I wanted to write, but I think it's a quick read. And what from I hear from people, it is a quick read, and that's important.
Yeah,
Um,
so so you talk about kind of the theme of this is this stoicism. Am I saying that right?
yes,
Stoicism,
stoicism. Yeah.
stoicism. Okay, and and tell us what stoicism means and kind of why did you choose that as your theme or your leadership style, so to speak.
Yeah, so Stoicism or Stoic philosophy, it's very misunderstood in that because people associate it with what the little s Stoic, the no emotion Stoic, stiff upper lip type of
Right.
approach to life. But the philosophy, big S Stoic, it's not anti-emotion at all. It's all about emotions. It has, I always describe in my talks is I have emotions, but my emotions don't have me. That's
Yeah.
kind of the difference of it. It's understanding, that anger, you're going to get angry. And that's okay. That's not bad. But if you allow that anger to dictate what you do next, to take you out of the driver's seat and let it take over, like that's when things don't usually end well. And
Yeah.
it's really just that awareness, understanding what's in your control and what isn't, and taking everything that happens and finding a way to turn it to your benefit because it's what you got to work with. But it's a philosophy that when I first was introduced to it, I hated it. I did
Yeah.
everything I could to disprove it. And I'm glad I did. Because I think when we try to disprove something, that's when we learn the most about it
Yeah.
and can come about it that way.
For sure. And I think you also stated in the book, it's like, which emotions do you want to give energy to?
Yeah.
Because we all have emotions. It doesn't do us any good. We know this, that to hold down emotions, but we also give energy to some and try and not get derailed by the others.
Oh, Steve, you're so spot on with that. And I ended my talk. I was just up this week with the Vikings again, and I ended my talk with the rookies with this quote from Marcus Aurelius, where it does talk about like, hey, like tell them like you have a fire, it's gonna make flame and brightness. He says out of everything thrown into it.
Yeah.
So what do you want to throw in your fire? What it's gonna grow no matter what. If you throw in a bunch of sofas and plastic chairs and stuff like that, it's gonna become a big fire and it's gonna be a toxic as heck one, right? Like it's gonna be really, really toxic. People aren't gonna want to be around that fire. So you're
Yeah.
not gonna attract the right people, versus one made out of, some wood. Might get smoky at times, but man, it's gonna smell a lot better than the sofa one.
And you kind of dove into your Latin and Greek philosophers in this book. There's a lot of and Roman, Marcus Aurelius, as you just mentioned, Seneca, other people,
Hmm.
from Socrates, from back in the day, so to speak. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how 3,000 years ago they still said things that are pertinent today. So it's pretty impressive.
And one thing that was important to me was 'cause I get frustrated when I read books and there's quotes, and then you're trying to find those quotes again. And
Yeah,
so I had to argue and push to get a lot, a couple of things in this book the way it is because it isn't structured normally.
yeah,
It's for 6 chapters and then it breaks off into the 4 pillars of safe. And same with the quotes of I wanted those to be bolded and separated from the paragraph so you could
yeah,
easily go back and find them. And yeah, it is
yeah,
the stuff written that long, thousands of years ago. It does work today, and that's why I love the philosophy, Steve. It's a
yeah.
practical, lived in the streets, forged in adversity philosophy. It's not an ivory tower one at all.
Yeah, well, I hope your editor found out you were right because the structure is very effective that way. I certainly resonated with me. So, and
Thank
then
you.
let's talk a little bit about amor fati. So, again, a term from the past, but what does that mean and why does it relate to you so much or resonate with you?
It's my favorite. I have a saying in my I wear a necklace almost every day with it on it. Amor fati is Latin for love of fate, and this idea of embracing your fate. So don't just accept it, but love it, and
Yeah,
not in a toxic positivity type of way, right? It's not saying that you get horrible news and you're expected to cheer. That's not it. But it's this idea of like you got like this is what you have. Like
yeah,
this is what life is giving you, and most of us take what life gives us and we're like, I'd rather have this. And we
mm,
spend so much time on those rathers
yeah,
instead of like, all right, what am I going to do with it right now? Take
yeah.
it and use it.
And I
Don't
think
take the hits, get stronger. Go
and
ahead.
you
Yeah.
use that quote from Teddy Roosevelt, who
Oh,
basically
yeah.
said, "We're not having our rathers right now."
Mm-hmm. Yep. And his friend, so yeah, on that camping trip of everything, gosh, you read that book and it's miserable. It puts a lot of things into perspective. I'm really
Yeah,
grateful. I was just out and it's hot out today and I'm out there, swinging the pickaxe and loading up wheelbarrowfuls of mulch after mulch and doing all the hard work. And then I get to come inside to an air conditioned house,
Yeah.
you know, pour some clean water into a glass and sit down on a computer. It's pretty lucky.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure. And I love too in the book how you have multiple chapters that say but how? Because a lot
mhm.
of times these things are, oh, they sound great and they make sense and it resonates with me, whatever. And then you say, okay, so then what do I do about that? And you do have multiple chapters in there about, okay, this is what I'm saying, but this is how you can incorporate it into your life. So that's impressive.
Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah.
means a lot to me that you brought that up because that was one of my that was something I was very passionate about from the get-go in writing a book and very determined. I did not want it to be a book that people, agreed with, liked and all that, but then left it with not knowing how to implement things. I didn't want to wait till the very end either. That was a
Yeah.
push from all the editors, like, oh, just yeah, at the end, have like an action, thing. I'm like, well, no, because we we can't wait till we get to the end
Yeah.
because these are busy people. It might take them a while, and it's just, let's start using it now. And yeah, I
Yeah,
I
that's good.
appreciate that.
And I love the stories too, and the fact that, in my intro to this podcast, I identify as a storyteller, and you love stories too, and I think
Mhm.
they're very effective. It's again, philosophies are great, and we can learn from them, but when it's related to a real life story of a real life person, it definitely hits home a little better, I think.
I think stories also, it was something I had to kind of work through when I started giving more keynotes and talks. As I was feeling, Steve, like I'm like, well, I don't have any amazing stories. You think of these people, these motivational speakers, who've accomplished things that seem like just beyond my own capabilities, from
Yeah.
you know climbing Mount Everest with one leg. Things I'm like, I don't know how to even go about, like how I'd even like walk to the bathroom with one leg. Uh, and so I felt like I couldn't ever compete with those people. And I had a very kind, uh, friend. He told me multiple times, he's like, Becky, he's like, you got to understand. He's like, a lot of us, we go to these conferences, or read these books and we hear these stories and we can't relate to them. He's
Yeah.
like, your stories are relatable
Yeah.
and that matters. And so that's what it, gave me the confidence to not just include stories of these incredible other leaders, but my own as well, that hopefully they feel relatable to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to get bogged down too much in the, on a podcast as far as the structure, but you have the STOA framework, STOA, and you
Hmm.
also have the SAFE framework. So just give us a little quick summary of what those are so we get context, and then we're going to tell everybody to go buy the book if they really want.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, I'm in leadership, and so therefore acronyms are a must. It's
yeah,
just a
yeah,
requirement. And but so SAFE is my leadership philosophy, and it comes from that idea that I do believe our job as a leader is to make those around us feel safe. And to
yeah.
say from the get-go, another, like, I'm out here to redefine leadership. It's a lifestyle, not a job title. I think we
Mhm.
make the mistake of waiting until you get that job title to start thinking about leadership. And you get the job title and people assume you are a leader.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, I tell athletes, I'm like, listen, you can win a championship, but that doesn't make you a champion. And you can be a champion and never have the trophy, never have the ring. And
Mhm.
they're two different things. Same
A
with,
great analogy. Yeah, yeah,
leadership, right?
yeah,
And so the SAFE framework, though, is built on four main pillars, and that's the strength to stand and act with integrity, agility to adapt to the needs of the moment, flexibility to reach for curiosity in adversity, and endurance to value the process over the outcome.
yeah,
And it comes from also that, again, kind of going back to, I mean, I love sports and I love all things athletic. And this, I think we've all know those people who go to the gym to get those show muscles, right? They want to look
yeah,
strong, but there's not a
yeah.
lot of functional strength. And the same goes with leadership. I think a lot of people are good at the sound bites and they're good at, the performative leadership. There's not a lot of functional. leadership there, and we see that when things go wrong a
Yeah,
lot.
for sure.
Um,
And I
and
think another thing you said in the book that really resonated with me too is you said wisdom gives you clarity to understand what's within our control and what's not.
mhm.
And I think that's really true because there's some things that we can control and some things we can't, and you just have to, have the courage to move forward, take action, and control things you can, and not rip yourself up about things you can't control.
But we spend most of our time though, I think on the things outside of our control. That's what blame is, right? We like to blame things, because taking accountability is a lot harder, but accountability keeps you grounded in what's in your control. And, when it comes to the outcome, it's the outcome that matters that I really kind of beat the drum on. We
Yeah,
chase the wrong outcome,
yeah.
and that then results in a process that can be dangerous. And so really making sure you understand what's the outcome that matters here. And once you know what that is, it will definitely change how you think about a situation, especially with parenting. My husband and I have this conversation almost daily. We have teenagers. So like it's okay, hold on, what's the outcome that matters? And we have to think on that. And then we'll often see, okay, if that's the outcome that matters, that that consequence we were thinking of doesn't really help us get there, right? It really so first identifying that is essential. And I think we make the mistake too often jumping to the wrong one.
So I'm curious, there's so, and I'm gonna reference a bunch in this podcast, but there's so many good statements and one-liners and things that to me are so, gosh, that's exactly, right. Uh, do you just come up with that? Is that are you just that that intuitive to come up with those, or have you seen some of those things from other places, or where do you come up with, some of the clarifying statements that you make in this book?
It's funny because I'm not good at them in like podcast interviews or on stage. Like the one liners, like I'll write those. I'll be like, gosh darn it, why didn't I say that
Yeah.
out loud on that? But yeah, I was pretty intentional in the last 3 years. I have not read any books by any modern authors. I've spent only my time with the old dead guys.
Yeah.
The one exception being Brett Crozier, who I tell his
Yeah.
story in the book. I
Right.
read his book, and his book is amazing. Surf When You Can. It's definitely up there with my favorite books for leadership. But it's so yes, it comes from in my head, but it's inspired
Yeah.
by the philosophy and then life, and then you're just hearing my own children talk. I gotta
Yeah.
say, God, they teach you a lot. That's why I still run my summer camps for kids because you learn so much from being around
Well,
kids.
you have a gift, you really do, and it's there's so I mean I just sat there writing a bunch of stuff down, and hopefully we can get to most of them today. But it's just it's incredible. So
Well, I'll
that's
give my and also my family helped me edit the book a ton. So I'm gonna give my especially my younger sister. This book is as good as it is because of her help. That
uh,
last weekend, my editor was saying, "Oh, it's fine to go on to the final stage of copy editing." He's like, "You're greenlit, you can go." And she heard me. I was talking to her. And she said, "Becky, trust yourself." She's like, "You don't sound confident." She's like, "Send it to me." She hadn't read it yet, and so I sent it to her and my parents and my older sister, and they spent the next 2 days poring over that book. That none of them have read it yet, and they all took the time and they made some amazing changes and caught so many mistakes. So, um, if you're gonna write a book, make sure you have a
yeah.
good family near you to
Yeah,
to help you
sounds
out.
like another one that I would just bring out is you say that options are external, they're beyond our control, but choices are internal, and we can decide. I love that because I'm somebody that's always taught my kids, and I try to live my life by choices. I like choices. We have choices, and you can make choices. So that's a good way to
Yeah.
describe it. So yeah,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And then to your point, the STOA framework that came out of, it's again an acronym, but STOA is where Stoicism got its name. So it's means a painted porch, and that's where the original Stoics all hung out and developed the philosophy was
yeah,
there. And uh, it's a way of both goal setting and strategic planning and debriefing all kind of one. It's just kind of continuous loop. And I studied how, the like fighter pilots do amazing debriefs, after action reports too. And I felt like we're missing that element in life. We don't do enough personal debriefing, and we forget to separate and understand decision versus outcome. They're two very different things. And this idea, did I get lucky or did I get unlucky? And
Yeah.
teasing that out. So that process has been fun to see,
And then we
work
talk
together.
about, focus on the outcome, and not the process. And so, that's the kind of the wrong way to do it. You should focus on the process and, know what your outcome is, but don't focus on it all the time. And I got to tell you that, the book, you're so vulnerable, in the bio, it says
I
you were
know.
raw. And I mean, you tell this story. When I read that piece about, you being in the hospital as a teenager, oh my God, it just ripped me up. It was so raw. And for you to experience that is just crazy. And so if you're okay, we can just kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
tell everybody that, you were admitted to a hospital with anorexia and, were really in trouble, but yet the treatment you received was what, harsh, questionable, was
Dog shit, I think could
helpful.
also
Oh,
work
yeah,
for that too.
exactly.
Yeah, I think we could do.
I mean, I could hardly read it, and you went through it. It's just unbelievable. So, and then you wrote a kind of a letter called, let me say this right, I chose the latter. So tell us a little bit,
Yeah.
without getting, too detailed, but a little bit about experience, and then why
Yeah.
you wrote that letter called I Chose the Latter.
Well, that became an essay that I wrote, for college admissions. That became a college admission essay and scholarship essay, and it's, one that, like, I went back and read it, and I was like, "Oh," like, it matches so brilliantly to what I'm doing now in the philosophy, and that, choosing, because it's all about, which kind of basically which handle to choose without saying that. However, I also realized, reading through that and then going back for this book and reading through all my diaries, I recorded everything. Because again, this is before we had phones. I mean, this is 25 years ago, or so, and so I had nothing to do when I was in the hospital but write. And so I wrote, and I took meticulous notes, Steve. I recorded every single thing. 8 conversations, like, it's a bit like serial killer level, like, details. Like, reading through, I'm like, "Oh my god. You need to calm down a bit." But because I had that, I could really go back and be there again. And I had this moment when I was writing the book where I had to decide, okay, am I going to tell the story that I thought was true and that I could tell, which is, that I handled this the right way or did all this, or am I going to be honest? And I realized that it was, I, it wasn't too hard to decide to admit the fact that the essay I'd written was a lie. It wasn't true.
Mm.
And that I had not chosen the right path. And, I knew I was writing it too, because then I went from being anorexic to bulimic. And so in this essay, I'm writing about how, I chose to do life better and I'm all healthy now, all this, and I wasn't at all. So that was it was a neat moment to get to take accountability and own
Mhm.
the fact that, you know, a lot of that essay was a lie. And
And to
hopefully
be
the
willing
colleges don't take back my scholarship. Um,
to be willing to be transparent and just see what, to be really honest with yourself, it's and a lot of us don't do well at that, so I think that was a very interesting piece of the book. And again, what you went through in the treatment for the anorexia, it's just so harsh. I mean, gosh, I don't, do they still do that crap today?
I don't know. I was trying to find I
Yeah.
unfortunately, yes. I don't I think I mean, the treatment's just not good. We
Yeah.
don't have good treatment for stuff, and I know reading through and how much food they just shove down you, I mean, I felt like, a goose getting ready, to be,
Oh,
butchered for some foie gras because,
yeah,
like, it was
exactly.
just
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of food, but it was so fascinating, like, I've spent my like life decades afterwards trying to figure out how did this bulimia like come back? Like, how did I go from anorexia to bulimia? What exactly happened? And decades of therapy couldn't solve it, but writing this book is what did. When I finally going back and reading, I'm like, it clicked. We were going after the wrong outcome. And of course, then that created a process that became incredibly dangerous
Yeah.
and unhealthy.
Well, you did, as you just said, you completed the outcome of the treatment, what the goal of the outcome was, which is to eat food and gain weight. But in
Hmm.
doing so, because of the process it took to get there, you just transferred it into something else that was just as
Yeah,
destructive. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
it was it was not good.
So tell us a little bit about K Sparks Spirit Award. That was something you were really proud of and went after. So tell us a little who she was and why you resonated with her so much.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out like where did this leadership like what was my first introduction, introduction to true leadership, and I realized it was this runner, cross country runner, Kay Sparks, and she is graduated like a year before my freshman year of high school, but she came back to do a run with us when the summer run. So if anyone ran cross country or do somebody did, you know, we're crazy runners. And so we run all summer long. And when I was running, my sister was a senior that year as well. And I remember seeing this girl Kay. And if you remember, guys, when you're a freshman in high school, somebody who like is in college, like just they seem amazing, right? Like they seem grown up but cool. And so she was running with us, and I watched her as like she ran with the girls at the front of the pack all the way down. She kept stopping and talking to people, and then she, stopped and she was talking with me on the run. She just kind of make her way up and down in the pack. And when she spoke to me, like I was like, she seemed to care what I had to say. Like it didn't seem like she was just like, all right, I got to talk to this little freshman, and she made me feel like I was welcome on this team. And and I knew that there was an award that was named after her of because she was, just such a, it was called a Spirit Award because we didn't know really we talked about leadership back then.
Yeah.
And I ended that run, Steve, and I was like, oh, I want that award. Like someday, like I want that. Like I want to be her. And that's why I wanted the award. And I saw, my sister ended up getting it. And I spent the next 4 years doing everything I could to be worthy of that award, which meant I wasn't trying to be on varsity at
Mhm.
all. That wasn't it. It was showing up for my teammates, cheering for them, doing everything I could to win it. And I did, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
But it wasn't talked about still as that being leadership. And then, it's not what you always saw from other captains of sports teams and stuff. And it was an interesting contrast and to kind of go back and look at it again, like what is leadership? Well, that
Yeah.
was leadership. It
Yeah.
wasn't, you don't have to be the fastest runner to be the best leader.
Yeah, for sure. And your story is an extreme, example, but we can all learn from it in a way of how destructive it was to live two different lives.
Hmm.
Because I mean, on the outside, you're eloquent, you're smart, you're accomplishing these things, whatever. Yet underneath, what nobody knew about was this destruction from the bulimia. So,
Yeah.
what that does to the psyche and you going forward, I mean, is a lesson for us all. We have to live who we are, right?
Well, and to your question, how we started this, you asked, how did I get into, the leadership coaching and everything? Well, the more, I guess, detailed answer to that question is, I was doing great. I had a business that was, it got to the point where I could have just sat back and let it keep going. I didn't have to keep hustling and grinding it out. Um, and, and I get it, guys. It's ironic, I understand running a business called Becky's Mindful Kitchen while being severely bulimic, provides some struggle. And that was the hard thing was I was like, I knew I was living a lie. And I knew that I wasn't really fulfilling that purpose. And I knew that I never could as long as I had that secret and that shame. So I had to decide like, do I just keep doing what I'm doing and coast?
Yeah.
Or do I dig deep and, you know, come clean, own, reveal my biggest source of shame and then get to do what really does light me up inside? And I
Yeah.
chose the latter.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. And, you know, you also use the analogy in the book, which I think is really interesting, about the two handles, and you talk about grabbing the wrong handle of integrity brings shame. And that's shame is a powerful word, but if you live in that world, it's as we said before, it's very destructive.
it is, and I would say like rationalization will mask shame, but integrity and accountability, like that's what erases it. And yeah, I guess the two handles. I mean, that's why the book is called what it is. I should talk about that. It's this
Yeah, yeah,
quote from Epictetus where he says, "Every situation in life has two handles, one by which it can be carried and one by which it cannot." A lot of times, the handle that breaks is also the handle that is the easiest one to grab. It's right there, offering itself up. The one that holds, it can be pretty hard to grab onto, but it will hold. And the more often, when we continue to grab it, it gets easier, right? Everything, like everything in life, when you do the hard thing eventually gets easier to do, but you have to be willing to hold on long enough to know. And for me, bulimia presented itself as the handle that held for a lot of years because it was familiar. It's the devil you know.
well,
So
and that's another quote that I thought was so interesting, as you say, familiarity, no matter how harmful or destructive it is, often feels safer than change.
yeah.
And I mean, we talk about that all the time in leadership, about how hard change is and how people resist change. And even though, again, in your extreme example, how destructive that was, it was still more familiar and seemed easier than this huge change. Yet, once you make the change, then you look back and you think, man, should have done that a while back.
I
Right?
know. Well, it's the uncertainty, and we see it play out now. Yeah, we see it playing out all the time, but especially now, right? Uncertainty is scary, and change is scary, and that's where, I love stoicism in because if you ground yourself always in what's in your control, then when you're faced with that uncertainty, you have something solid to hold on to. And
Yeah.
it's really helpful, but also understanding that you're human. You're going to grab the wrong handle. And that was really important to me in that I didn't write a book that said, hey, the only way that you can truly live life and not just pass time, or the only way you can be a leader is if you only, always grab the handle that holds, because that's not realistic at all. And so wanting to make sure to have, an answer to, well, what happens when you grab the wrong handle? What happens when you screw up? That was that mattered, and I loved being able to bring in, I have so much of a stoicism and, kind of that philosophy, but bringing in some of the more Eastern philosophy of kintsugi through the Japanese art of repairing ceramics was a fun way to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
find the two.
That's another great analogy. But so let me ask you, I think you referred to it before. So when you started writing the book,
Hmm.
you were still, struggling with this disease.
No, no. So I was when I started writing the book, I started writing last January after I had I had an injury from jujitsu
Yeah.
at that. But I started creating the Stoa process. That was what I created. Yeah, as I was recovering. Yeah,
Okay.
from the
Okay.
disease.
And I would assume that the disease is something that, you can't just claim as totally
Oh yeah, you're
cured.
right. Yeah, no, yeah. Though that's a
Right.
fair.
Yeah.
That is fair, and that was one thing um, where this is perfect. So with Stoa of identify first, like what does success look like? I
Mm,
realized, Steve, that like I could not have success be that I never binge and purge again.
mhm.
Because if that was it, then I know that I would end up creating a process, finding other habits that would not be very healthy. Because we're really good at swapping out one problem for another if we're doing that way. And so that, and I also know that when we make such black and white rules around success, like that pressure and that fear can be dangerous as well. And we have to give ourselves room to be human. I don't think we do that enough. We have to.
100%. Yeah. I think the world we live in right now continues to push us and push us and push us into black and white thinking and black and white decision making. And I've said it before. I gave it in a speech I gave once, and I just say I believe in the gray.
Mhm.
Because yes, there's certain things that are they're solid. You're going to do this, but it depends, and sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes things happen. May think this way on one thing and then maybe a little different on another thing, and that doesn't make us, um, weak. It makes us human because we're not going to be perfect every day.
It it grinds my gears that we don't allow for people to say I was wrong.
Yeah.
And like to we don't celebrate that enough. And
Yeah.
it just because and I work a lot with people in healthcare, and I know that doctors are told time and time again, like, don't ever admit to
Yeah.
making a mistake. And that's how you learn. Like you have to create as leaders, if those you lead cannot come to you and say, "Hey, I screwed up." Like
Yeah.
you're just gonna like you're not creating a better workforce. You're just creating one that like is again like you might get lucky also for a while, and it may be that their screw up can be covered up pretty quickly, but that luck runs out,
Yeah.
and that's just delaying when you have to pay the cost. So being able to create a time and a place for people to own things and admit that they're wrong and
Yeah.
allow people to make
No,
mistakes.
it's so interesting to me because I've spent my career leadership and leadership development and helping leaders grow and so on. And you look at I always say own your behavior. You were going to do things, but just own it. And people have a tremendous tolerance for if you're honest up front and admit you were wrong or
Hmm.
whatever. So if we all know that, why is it so hard for people not to go there? Because so many times people lie and deceit and just do things that, eventually catch up to them. And we all know that, but everyone still tries to get away with it. So,
Yeah, we've had a rule for our daughters since they could talk, which was the consequence for lying will always be greater than
yeah,
the one for telling the truth. And
yeah,
yet they still would tell lies. I'm like, you, why? So it is human nature, and it's just, but just like everything, it takes consistency as a
yeah,
leader. And so as a parent, you have to catch yourself, because if I say those words, I better be willing to follow that up, because the moment I show that I wasn't telling the truth of that, they have no incentive, no reason to believe me when and tell the truth. So that's where it's really on us as leaders to make sure, are we backing up our words with actions? Do we allow, and do we support and versus or type of life? I think we still, a lot of times in society, we see or winning
yeah.
over and.
No, absolutely. Another great analogy you use is that, we live our lives a lot of times on a simmer, just ready
Mhm.
to hit the boil, So again,
Yes.
it's one of those things. If we're aware of that, then we can kind of say, "Oh my gosh, I am simmering." And you gave examples of, your husband might call you on his way home and says, "I'm simmering right now." So,
Yeah,
maybe,
it is a
yeah,
game changer.
yeah,
Vocabulary, having the words to use, because if you have that, saying like I'm at a simmer, you don't have to say anything else in our house. Like you don't have to, so you don't, because a lot of times we don't want to talk about the thing even. So just being able to say that, hey, I'm at a simmer, everyone knows what that means.
yeah.
But
So.
it's
Yeah.
also the onus is on us then to do something about it.
Right. So you can, again, if you bring it up and you're aware of it, then you can change it or make
Mm-hmm.
a do it. But you as a partner or a colleague or whatever, if someone says that to you, now's not the time to give, honest, hard feedback
Yeah.
because you're gonna make them boil, So wait
Yep.
till the
Oh
time is
yeah.
right. So, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. When I tell my kids that if they decide to push it, they know very well. And I
Yeah.
will even tell him, I was like, listen, and my daughter, I mean, when she was like, oh my gosh, I remember my daughter coming home from, first, she was 6 years old, getting off the bus, bursting in the door. And she was like, I am at a full on boil, mom. She was, I'm boiling over, and just like friggin' like, and then took off up the stairs into her room. And I knew, like, it's, we take the time to talk it out. I know that when she's like that, I just stay away
Yeah.
for at least like a good 10 minutes, and then I come up, and and just giving each other space for those
Sure.
emotions.
Then in the book, you do give, exercises and things that you can do.
Mhm.
Being a physical therapist and seeing this, I understand this very well, and I'm glad you brought it up in the book, is the just the basic breathing exercise through the nose that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, where if we breathe through the mouth and we're fired up and whatever, we're in our flight or fight response, and that's the sympathetic nervous system. So
Mhm.
again, those are simple tools, but so effective that anybody can do. It's not like you need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out.
Right. I know. And but I'm guilty also of just forgetting the whole breathing thing at times. And it's one of those things where like you when you do it, you're like, oh my God, yeah, this does work. It's right
Yeah.
there. And but that there's the one breathing technique, yeah, to calm yourself down. I do that. I
Yeah.
do that quite often because it's one that you can do without people, you know, noticing always. So you can do it in public, and yeah, it's it's helpful. And I think as leaders, we need to be more intentional with grounding ourselves before we enter conversations, before we get on stages, um, because it's important and doesn't take time, but we don't prioritize it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Another great quote in the book from Marcus Aurelius is when he says, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" You know, 'cause
Yeah.
sometimes, really, is it necessary to do this? Do I really have to say this? I mean,
Hmm.
those are things that, again, if you're intentional, it's worth considering, right?
If anybody listening is like me in that we still think we can do 10 things when there's really only time for five, that quote is a good one to have. And I repeat it to myself, and I'll be like, okay, is it necessary that I even get this little laundry going right now? Or is that gonna make me a little bit late? And I try to do too much. But also, is it necessary? I know there's something I was gonna say to my husband that he forgot to do. And yeah, he had already told me he was at a simmer. And so
Yeah.
I got to think, like, is it necessary that I mention this? No, it's not gonna change anything except for increase the temp, so it's that is one of my favorite quotes of just, and I have a workshop room I hold workshops in, and have canvases on the walls, big canvases, and that one is definitely very prominent on there.
Another great one is I like that when you say nice is telling people what they want to hear, but kind is letting them know what they should hear. And I think that's a good analogy there to think of that, because yeah, we can all be nice, but sometimes, being kind to somebody is letting them know that this isn't working or this isn't appropriate or whatever.
I live in Iowa, and you often hear like Iowa nice, and
Yeah.
Iowa has the nicest people, and they're great. I love living in Iowa, but
Mm.
I don't really enjoy nice people nearly as much as I enjoy kind people, because nice people, um, I know plenty of people who are very nice to your face, right, but not very kind behind your back,
Yeah.
and that that's where we get hung up. And I think people get so they want to be liked, and we value being liked more than being trusted.
Hmm.
And if I'm going to trust you, that means you're going to at times probably tell me things I don't want to hear, right?
Yeah.
You're going to tell me the hard things. And
Mm.
that's important to me. I mean, my husband does that every time I'll text him the barrage of like all these things that just happened, or something like that. And he'll respond with like, amor fati, to remind me of that. And there's times I want to respond, fuck you. Like, because we don't want to hear that right now, but I need that reminder. And I know I do. And I take a moment, have my little flare up of like, and then be like, yep, he's right.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. So we need those people in our lives. They matter.
Yeah, and it's like our brains are wired, we know this from brain science. Our brains are
Mhm.
wired to kind of go towards the easy or the comfort or whatever. And
Mhm.
again, you say in the book, this life is not about avoiding challenges. It's about, how do I adapt to them? Because we know they're there and we can make
Mhm.
changes and whatever, but to totally avoid them, you don't learn and grow and you don't get anything done. So,
No, and I love, for me, it's, we do again say that life is short. And I love the stoic kind of framework around that. It's like, questioning and pushing back of saying like, no, we just waste a lot of our time. Life isn't short. We waste it.
yeah.
And looking at every day of just like as a separate life, like, did I live a good life today? Am I proud of what I did? And I spent a lot of time. I mean, I feel these poor rookies, these football players, they come in, and in my presentation, we cover Latin. So we talk about amor fati, we talk about stoicism, and I talk a lot about death, and like
Yeah.
this idea of, tomorrow's not promised. Well, what does that mean? Like, how does that, it's easy to say it, but what does that mean in reality of like, do we feel good about our interactions with the people we had today?
Yeah.
Are we living our values, or are we just letting them stay on the wall type thing? And really digging into that, I think we get nervous around those conversations because they make us uncomfortable.
Well, and you told a heart-wrenching story, and that one of those players, what you
Hmm.
said about death, and that was very resonating to him, and
Yeah.
he said something, and then horribly, he was killed not that long after that in a car accident. So
Yeah.
even though they're young and athletic and got the world in front of them, that's great. You just never know. So
It is, I've lost two of my summer camp kids. I lost two of them within 1 year. And so I have two memorials to kids out in the timber, which it just, no one should, I, I can't, I'm not, I've told people, no more, no more, like, I can't do this. No more memorials out there. And these two girls, they're incredible, and they lived more life in their 7 and 13 years respectively than some do in decades more. And
yeah,
one had a very long battle fight with cancer, and the other, it was incredibly sudden. And that's, it sums up, that's what happens. So you don't know. Sometimes we were given a heads up, but often we're not.
yeah,
And so we can't bank on that. So I love
sure,
that, just again, that concept of, okay, this is what I got today.
sure.
A lot of things can suck big time, but you're alive. And so that beats out the alternative.
And you also say, approach adversity with curiosity. So,
Hmm.
yeah, things can be tough and seem horrible and seem tough, but if you're at least, have the gift of being curious and whatever, you can look for solutions as opposed to you know, just
Those opportunities are
appearing.
always there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. That's a, my husband, sometimes he'll see like something will happen, and he'll look at me and he'll be like, he can see it in my eyes. He's like, "You're thinking this is a story, isn't this for you?" And I'm like, "Oh yes, this is." Like, like I see things as a story, as something there. I'm like, I can turn this, and
Yeah.
that's a fun way too of just like, you know, get hit with an obstacle.
Mhm.
If you are somebody who is up for a challenge, and you're competitive, and you like hard work because you know it pays off, then challenges, obstacles, they become fun,
Yeah.
because you got to find that opportunity that most people miss. And that's where you see success happen for people.
So what you do on the day to day, you have three daughters, as we said, you live on a piece of property that takes a lot
Mhm.
of hard work and
Yeah.
maintenance, and you're a keynote speaker. Are you still doing Becky's Kitchen?
I do that with, yep. So I run my summer camp still every week. So tomorrow, another full day one of that. So it's every week's a different camp, and it's neat because I get to have teenagers come out as helpers and teach them leadership skills, and I
Yeah.
teach these. kids the same things I go and talk to adults about. And sometimes, Steve, the kids are better at implementing those tools than adults are
Yeah.
because they're not hung up in the in all the things that weighs us down as we get older. So I do that. I will do couple cooking classes throughout the year. Not many, but if it seems like a fun group of people, I'll say yes. But I love, my work days. Uh, I keep thinking are gonna go from 17-hour days and down to maybe manageable like 12. They haven't yet,
Okay.
but I love what I do, and
Yeah.
I feel so lucky for that. And it's fun, and I see that in people like yourself, right? When you love it, man,
Oh yeah.
it's what you want to spend your time doing, and
Yeah,
it's
it doesn't feel like work then. Yeah,
I
exactly.
love the physical hard work outside. That's my favorite.
And do you work with individual clients too on a coaching
I
basis?
do.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
do. I like doing so. Keynotes are great. They're really fun. Please have me come talk to at your conference.
Yeah,
But it's sometimes hard to not know if you're actually having an impact. And so it's been fun to be able to do both the keynotes and then, you know, consulting with different companies and working with their executives on a longer term basis, going in and doing group stuff. So doing a mix of everything, it's neat because you get, well, you're never bored, but then also you get to see that payoff. And I've been
yeah,
working with some surgeons, residents, and one of them graduates next week actually, and it's fun to see, growth happen and be able to just hopefully have an impact that lasts a while on somebody.
for sure. Well, we've covered a lot of material here, and there's so
Mhm.
much more I could talk about. Like, again, the book's fantastic. So, what haven't I asked you in anticipation of our discussion today? What haven't I asked you that you want to be sure and get in the program?
I think what I want, I mean, I know most of your listeners already love leadership, right? That's why they're listening to this.
Yes.
I'll just leave this little thing nugget for people to think about is I don't believe, Steve, that there are good or bad leaders. I don't. They are just leaders. What we often see as bad leadership or poor leadership isn't leadership at all. That
Mhm.
is someone using power, authority, or status, right, and calling it leadership because it's a lot easier to grab those handles to get our way. It's like
Yeah,
a parent saying, because I said so, right? It's a lot easier than explaining the why.
yeah,
And it's, I left this, it's just fresh in my head because I just came back last night from Minnesota. But I told the rookies, I said, guess what, guys? Like, you don't have authority, power, and you're not much status right now. You're a rookie, so now you get to just be leaders. Like you don't have to. You're not burdened with that temptation to use that power and authority that
mm,
others are. And it's why I think before you get the title, that's when it's time to learn how to be a leader. Because once you have the title, it's a lot harder to lead.
and it's such a great point because so many of us, probably wait until we get the title and say, "Oh no, what am I going to do? I'm scared shitless." So, I better, I better get a coach or something. Where
Yeah.
that you had a coach or had your training or whatever earlier before you got to that. I think that's a really good point. So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and definitely realizing and just being mindful of the fact that, like, you do have these other handles that are just tempting as shit. Asking you to be like, hey, you know what? Just like grab the power one, like, and, grab the authority. You can just tell them what to do.
yeah,
And it's just like, especially in the beginning, staying consistent with, if you say you want to build a culture that looks like X, Y, and Z, you better know exactly what you're going to do to build that. And that's where STOA, that process I talked about, is so important because we all know goal setting and strategic planning. If you're listening to this, you've done it.
yeah,
Where we forget, well, the part that we don't do are the action steps. And that's what the A in STOA is for. That's
yeah.
the thing that actually gets it done.
Yeah.
Because if you want to lose trust, have people lose trust in you, then you do this. What you do is you say what they want to hear and then you don't do it.
Yeah.
That's how you lose the trust. So making sure that you follow through, that's what makes you a leader.
So, Becky, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
That would be, oh shit, I should have just said what I just said for that one.
Well, it
No,
might be, if it's the same as what you just said, that works.
no, no, I would say the pearl wisdom would be that, um, okay, if you want more of something, call it out. And what I mean of that is, if somebody does something and you liked it and you want them to do it again, make sure they know that. Call out the good and you'll get more of it. Give people a positive identity. That's what that looks like. And people want to be good. So call it out.
Awesome. Well, Becky, this has been a real pleasure. As I said multiple times in this podcast, I love the book. It's a fantastic
Good.
book. I hope it does well, and I'm sure it will. And it sounds like you're doing great things in the world. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'm so happy for you. And it's been just great talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, take care, and hopefully we'll run into each other down the road one of these days.
Absolutely. I'll head out your way.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.